Okay, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Life from the Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and I will be, actually, I'm not going to be your friendly Dungeon Master today. Force a habit there. This is my continuation of my series of videos on the RPG A Day event for 2017. Today, if I should say, this is the first of the videos you're seeing, this exercise is an opportunity to answer one question for each day for the month of August in 2017, dealing with role-playing games, your relationship with role-playing games, and so forth. So today's question is, has the most inspiring interior art? So as with some of the other questions, well, I mean, to be honest, most of the questions here are all fairly subjective as well too. This one more so than any of the other questions, or than many of the other questions. What's inspiring art to one person is just not necessarily going to be, float the boat of other people. And I didn't really want to get into an idea of what, or rather an analysis of what is inspiring. My answer to the question of covers has an objective. I think what catches the eye, what's marketable. As to what's inspiring, though, is completely subjective. So what I decided to do is, instead of talk about what game has the most inspiring art, and I suppose there's a bit of unfairness there, because some games just have a longer pedigree than other games, so they've had more of an opportunity to make an impression on on my psyche. I played, for instance, Dungeons and Dragons since 1983. So, 34 years of images that have been burned in my brain are going to have an impact more so than, say, a game I just picked up recently. That's not to say the newer games don't have really, the art isn't necessarily really evocative and gives me inspiration. Just some things have, resonated longer than others. But what I thought of is, no, I actually didn't think of a game in particular. I didn't want to just go with Dungeons and Dragons as my answer for that, because there's obviously, D&D has gone through a series of different changes in the aesthetic of the look that they had. So that's obviously, I think that's a pretty broad category, and I don't want to get into the killifish of, what was inspiring for each of the different editions. But one thing I thought that was fairly consistent throughout that is, of course, the dragons part of Dungeons and Dragons. And when I was thinking about what things were inspiring, I was thinking of one particular product that came out in, I believe it's the mid 2000s. Let me check the early 2000s, 2003. So this product prompted an entire weekend of gaming. It came out around the same time as the D20 Modern, and it really it made me want to use dragons in an adventure more so than I think any other product had before. So the product I'm talking about is the original, and actually I don't think this is the original. Now that I think about it, I think there was one for second edition as well, but the third edition 3.0 version of the Dragonomicon is the book that I think was the most inspiring for me. And one of the this starts from the cover, because this was I may be wrong here, because I think there may have been some other covers. Actually, I really don't know. I don't know if there were other covers that were strictly this kind of illustrative or like painting cover, rather than the strict blank color, like sort of solid color with a bit of a design element or an illustration in the middle design they had for third edition. Certainly, I mean, later in the life cycle of that game, they ended up doing some different covers. But this is the first one that broke with the mold for it. And for a monster that is in the title, it certainly deserves that. And I think it's Todd Lockwood who did the cover for this. And it's just what an incredible looking cover. And it's also, I mean, for those unfamiliar with the setting, red dragons are typically sort of seen as because they are chromatic dragons, they are evil dragons, other than in the Eberron setting, because they're not defined by their good or evil by their the color of their scales. But I love this because it shows you know, it's a family. It's a family of dragons with little wormlings down there, and some slightly older dragon. And given the size difference between these two, it's either, you know, a bit of a May-December romance between the dragons here, or it is an elder dragon with one of its offspring bringing back food for the others. But what this book was mechanically was to give a bunch of different rules for how to use dragons in the Dungeons and Dragons game. But one of the things that I really love about it is this was the first time they had, again, this is a subjective, you know, assessment of it. This was the first time they had really, really top shelf painterly artists do versions of what the older illustrations of the dragons looked like in the, starting with the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Monsters Manual. Each of the dragons in the D&D setting had a very distinct kind of physiognomy. They had a distinct kind of jaw, and, you know, sometimes their horns were very different. This was the first time to try and make those look really real, and it's I believe it's stuck with the game since as well too. But this is what's on the interior of the book as well too. So here's all your chromatic dragons there, and there are, oh, actually, no, forgive me, no, there are a mixture of different kinds of dragons in here. I think that's a silver dragon right there. I think that's a gold dragon there. That is a blue. I think it's a bronze or a brass. It's a green down there, and black dragon, white dragon, brass or bronze up here, and I think big old red dragon right there. What this book had as well in terms of the art in it is they gave lots of great kind of like taxonomy style illustrations in it as well. So you have things like this. There's the draconic skeleton. You have the draconic organs as well. The musculature of the dragon. Oops, there he is. Or she. I don't know if that is a male or female. And while there is like a lot of interesting stuff in here too, just from an art perspective, like this little thing here showing a dragon in flight just made me want to use these really, really badly. The book also gave illustrated versions or full, like, detailed versions of each of the different major kinds of dragons, the chromatic dragons and the metallic dragons. And they gave notes that, like, a field zoologist might give as well too. So a lot of the illustrations are like this here, giving notes about what the different types of dragons would have, how to recognize them, like a bird watching kind of thing. If you're watching them from the ground up, how to recognize the different kinds of dragons. And they give, again, for each of the things, so you can see how the brass dragon's wing structure is illustrated as being very different from, say, a bronze dragon wing structure. So that stuff, like the art in here, just made me, you know, it made my mind reel with the options of what you could, you know, how to incorporate some of these really cool creatures into the game. There's also one illustration here that may be one of my favorite illustrations of dragons of all time, and it's a bit of a cheeseball monster, and this isn't the first product that it appeared in. This illustration actually first appeared in Monsters of Faerun, which was the first Monster Manual supplement or companion that came out after the original Monster Manual came out. But right here, this Fang Dragon illustration by Sam Wood. I just love that thing. I think it's so cool looking and so dangerous. Like, if dragons are supposed to be these, you know, furious engines of destruction, nothing screams that like what that illustration does. So, oh, and then of course they gave, where are we here? The different age variations, because in the Dungeons, and again, I may be saying something you already know here, so forgive me for that, but ages, as the dragons age, they change in size and in capability, and generally as you get more powerful as characters, you will be facing older dragons because they're, generally going to be more powerful than the younger ones. What this gave you is, and I think it's Ron Ron Spencer. I'm confusing him with a Marvel artist. They give you age illustrations of each of the major dragons as well too. So you would see what the the different dragons would look like as they age. And forgive me, Ron Spencer didn't do all of them, but here we go. Here's Ron's version of the red dragon as well too, and showing the skull, where their main lair. So that's one of the things when I thought of one of the, I should say that is one of the books that really inspired me to do stuff in my game based solely on the material, on the illustration. I've read, I don't think I've read all of this book because a lot of it is just game crunch, and to be honest, like I'm the kind of DM who doesn't really care that much about the crunch. I can make things do whatever I want them to do in the game because I'm the dungeon master. But the illustrations and the supported by some of the text in here was terrific. But honestly, the illustrations alone would have been enough to set my mind, reeling and with ideas for what to do with them in my D&D game. So anyway, that is my answer to which RPG. And again, I'm not saying that D&D does necessarily. I think it's just almost any game I've picked up has at least something in there that has has inspired me to do something with the game. I will say too, I'm unfortunately one of those players who, if there isn't inspiring art in it, I have a really, really, really hard time getting behind the rules. I'm an illustrator myself, and I mean, that might be part of just a bias on my part that if they're not bringing something visually interesting and visually appealing to me in the game, I'm going to have a hard time getting behind that game. Yeah, I guess but that's something that's more telling about me and my shortcomings in inability to see past an ugly packaging to get to what might be a really rich treat inside. But anyway, yeah, that's my answer for today's question. Tomorrow's question will be: describe a game experience that changed how you play. I feel like I've already answered that question in one of the other ones, but let me see if I can come up with something new for tomorrow. So if you have any questions or comments regarding this this video or the series of videos, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the section below, and I'll endeavor to get back to you on those in a timely fashion. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and I will hope to see you again tomorrow. See ya.